I think it would have been unthinkable not to join up. You know, you couldn't have resisted becoming a member of the Hitler Youth without some dire consequences.
Diese Stätte birgt einen der 21 toten Kameraden, die in den schweren und schwersten Zeiten des Kampfes einer kleinen Anzahl von Männern und Frauen um die Freiheit unseres Volkes gefallen sind. Wenn ihr, meine Kameraden, der Marscheinheit des Gebietes Pommern, heute von hier euren Bekenntnismarsch beginnt, dann seid ihr der lebendige Beweis dafür, dass der Geist Mallons in euch lebt. Seid in harter Zucht und Kameradschaft, in einem unüberwindlichen Glauben an die Mission des Nationalsozialismus. Beispiel für die Millionen, die in unseren Reihen stehen. Tragt diese Fahnen sauber und rein mit ganz klaren Herzen und mit harten Fäusten in den kommenden Tagen und Wochen auf eurem großen Marsch zum Führer.
Yeah, my uncle, his name was Philip, my father's brother. He was a brown shirt. He was also a musician, quite accomplished. He played the violin, a horn. He was an instrument maker by trade, making musical instruments. And we lived together for not too terribly long a time. I think it was a little bit more than a year, perhaps.
Was he a staunch Nazi?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so was my father, really. He never joined the party, but he was always a supporter of Hitler, I know. Apparently I got to be quite a handful. I always was. I always got in trouble. Used to get whaled by my uncle. And apparently he complained to my father about my antics. So that's how I got shipped off to this military school in Wilhelmsdorf, in southern Germany. And started there at the age of 10. Stayed there for 4 years. Pretty miserable life, really. It wasn't coincident with Hitler being in full power at that time, but I think it was about a year after I was there that this all got converted, and it really changed. Very rigid. I didn't like it there at all. An awful lot of stress was being paid to physical fitness. Physical fitness was just a rigueur for that administration.
Wo kommt so mancher hintendrein, wer am Abend bei den Mädchen wollte, stets der Erste sein.
I never was any good at sports or never had any great endurance. I think I must have inherited some of my mother's weaknesses in the lungs. She always had lung problems, and I would easily run out of breath. So running around the playing field was very difficult. So when I would drop down, the upperclassmen would come around and with their Sam Brown belts would start beating on me. That's in retribution for not being able to do it. So that's just the way life was in that circumstance.
Seid herzlich willkommen, Kameraden, in unserer Heimat. Und wenn ihr wieder von hier zieht, dann bitte ich euch, dem Führer die Grüße unserer Heimat zu übermitteln und ihm zu sagen, dass eure Fahnen die Liebe des ganzen deutschen Volkes bekleidet.
Did they have a curriculum of, like, did you have to learn math and, I mean, just a normal school curriculum?
Oh yeah, normal school curriculum. And the method of learning there was by beating it into you, not by trying to explain it further, you know, to make you understand what they're trying to do. So the punishment always was flailing, and I'll never forget one time the entire class was apparently performing so miserably that the teacher had to call in an assistant, and the two of them stood up front with their sticks and were calling forth the individual students that needed to be flogged, and they were just having a great time wailing away at everybody. And you know, in those days you didn't wear long pants. You wore very short pants, and when you bent over, that would expose even more of your upper leg. And they made it a point to hit on the bare flesh. And when they got through, you had orange and red and green and red welts on your legs. But that was not anything unusual. That's how they taught and how they made you learn. And I'll just never forget how relieved I was when I came to the United States, went to school there, and none of that was going on in the classes. So that was a good thing. You had to be in the Hitlerjugend, and that's when I became a little official Nazi.
Can you kind of talk about any of the noticeable changes during that transition?
Well, I think it would have been unthinkable not to join up. You know, you couldn't have resisted becoming a member of the Hitler Youth without some dire consequences. Well, I tried to escape a couple of times and go to Italy, but I got caught.
Did you sneak out, or did you...
Well, at that age, you weren't very adept at getting by, no money, and no orientation as far as where do I go next and how do I get by and where am I going to eat and all that. So you don't get very far.
How far were you down the line in that school before you made your first escape attempt?
That was just in the fourth year.
In the fourth year?
Yeah.
And that was, you made a couple of escape attempts?
Made a couple, yeah.
And how did you, what was your attempts? Did you just go to the nearest bus stop and just catch a bus? And
No, I started walking.
Oh. And did you do it at night, or, I mean, was the school, was there any like fence around it, or you couldn't leave? Or
No, you could get out. Yeah. The police caught me.
Oh, okay. And then they returned you to the school.
Yeah.
And what kind of punishment, if any, did you suffer?
I'll let you guess.
More severe beatings.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So So after that, you tried to escape again?
Yeah, and the same thing happened. So that's when my father decided, that was on one summer vacation. Instead of my going to Switzerland, which I had done before, my father was in America at that time, so he had me come over on a visitor's visa. And that was the last time I was in Europe. In those days, you didn't have all this formality of going through all the rigmarole that they have nowadays. Taxi pulls right up to the tarmac next to the plane. And all the people that were going to fly on this plane were standing outside waiting for the final passenger, me. So the taxi drives right up to the plane. I get out, and everybody is greeting me, and I say, "Heil Hitler!"
So when you stepped out of the taxi, you said Heil Hitler?
Yeah, I did, and everybody laughed.
Everyone laughed.
Yeah, I had on my little short black pants, and on the plane we went.
So at that point, in terms of the war, then, did people really understand what was going on in Europe, and they just thought it was fun? So they just thought
This was in 1936,
okay.
so there was no war. Hitler had just been in power about 3 years, I think, at that time.
So it was just a political party like
Yeah,
any other.
yeah, and there weren't any war clouds on the horizon as far as we knew. Yeah. So that's the way I arrived in the United States. I didn't really get to doing well until I came to California. And once I got to California, I don't know what it was. The atmosphere in school was totally different. The relationship between the kids in the class was totally different. And I liked it. And so I put my effort into it and ended up doing well. And went to work for a variety of people, mostly the rice farmers. I did all kinds of menial labor. Worked in the ditches, drainage ditches, clearing out the tules, and bucking sacks in the field. And so I went to Chico, where the contractor also lived. And one day was visited by the FBI. And they searched all my belongings. They took my Hitlerjugend membership card and my pin, and they said I had to report to Sacramento, the FBI office down there. So I made the trip down there, and they laid it on me and said, "You got two choices. You can either go to a concentration camp or you can join the army." So I didn't think the idea of a concentration camp sounded very exciting, so I said, "Okay, I'll join the army." Because I was still a German citizen, they couldn't very well put me in the American Army, so I got naturalized. I got my American citizenship. in a mass ceremony that had a whole bunch of foreign people there. At the University of Kentucky, I was enrolled in a course of topography, making maps of aerial photographs. And ended up on a boat, and 28 days later we got off in New Guinea.
Up from Australia and across jungle-clad New Guinea, we learned amphibious warfare and used the sea lanes for surprise.
And in New Guinea, we had a bunch of boxes unloaded. We came in on a Liberty ship. I had a bunch of boxes unloaded, and these were modules made by Higgins, and they made up LCM, these landing craft mechanized, with the ramp in the front lowered down. And they had all these modules that had to be welded back together. So that was the next job we had, to do that. I was in the amphibious engineers. So we put all these modules together and loaded up the landing craft back on another ship, got on the ship and made a landing in the Philippines.
The Philippines.
Now get this. These are the Philippines. Up at the top is Luzon, the most important island. Manila, Corregidor. The Japs are expecting us here. Down at the bottom is Mindanao, another place the Japs are expecting us. Got it?
And after we took that place over, we went by land into Manila. And I got my BS degree, and then I got my master's degree in civil engineering. And I worked with my physics professor, who was also a German, on a number of devices. Portable disk drive that I made for applied magnetics.
Now, what was that the precursor to? Is that the precursor to the hard drive? Or
Yeah. Well, it is a hard drive, and it's a rudimentary thing compared to what we make today. This device had heads spaced so that the tracks, each one of these heads has a number of tracks on it, and the heads are staggered so that the tracks interlace. So the entire large portion of the disk is used up for data storage. And there's the motor that drives the disk, and the electronics are in the lid. Here's a better picture of that arrangement. You can see what you have there. The whole thing closed up. It's another picture here.
Now, how big is that in real terms? It's a pretty big hard drive.
Well, the box is about yay big. It was a standard rack-mounted thing. You could rack-mount it, which is about this wide. It's about this large, and it was about that thick. And so that's what the box looked like when it's closed up. This was really the first portable mass storage disk drive that was made. And Applied Magnetics sold this device to a Japanese company. But he never acknowledged that I followed in his footsteps, so to speak, which is kind of unfortunate. You know, I would have thought that here was an opportunity for him to say something positive about his son, but no, he couldn't bring himself to do that.
And you never communicated that to him?
No. Wouldn't have done any good. I don't think he would, well, we could have never had a discussion. So I could have made a statement and he would just sit there, you know.
And did he ever physically abuse you?
He gave me a good licking one time and I deserved it. So, but no, his brother, on the other hand, was more inclined to do that to me. When I lived with his brother and his mother in Mainz for a while, every opportunity that his brother could see, why he would seem to take his temper out on me. I probably had it coming, I don't remember what it was, but being a rebellious kid, you know, you're always in trouble.
Did you feel that he had a right to hit you even though you weren't his son?
Oh, I never looked at it that way. There were a lot of people that hit on me, so it's I just, he was an adult and I wasn't, you know, and it was always the adults that seemed to be the ones meting out the punishment, so there was nothing unusual there.
So later on, when your father visited you and he was living in Wisconsin, did you feel you had a better relationship with him, or pretty much the same that it's always been?
It's probably as good as it ever got. It was a little bit stiff and stilted, but still, I enjoyed having him, and he seemed to enjoy being there, so it was good. I remember one time, which for some reason I can't forget, but we were up at Big Bear Lake, and he was sitting across the way with this little boy, the son of the people that we were visiting. He had this kid on his knee and he was bouncing him and he was all smiles and he kept saying, "Mein Sohn, mein Sohn, mein Sohn," meaning my son, my son, my son. And for some reason this just stuck me right through the heart, you know, because he never called me his son. But that was my father.
When it came closer to when he was like near the time of passing away, did your relationship get any closer towards the end, or was it just pretty much stayed the status quo?
Pretty much status quo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if we talk specifically about your father, do you have any regrets or anything you'd ever want to actually tell him if he were here now?
Well, I don't know if he would sit still long enough.
If he could, if he did.
If he did, yeah. Yeah, I would like to open up and just tell him what opportunities we've missed during our life together that was really a shame. I know he tried to be a good father to me in the best way that he could. It's just that not everyone is cut out to be a good parent.